grandmother know about this? If I were to ignore this infraction, I would certainly be remiss. You get my drift? This born-to-be-wild thing is making me nervous. I think you're doing your ancestors a disservice. Louis, do your classmates know about this? You're about 6 feet 5 inches from the abyss.
Well, hello there, colleagues around town and across the globe. It's time for another episode of Witch Hunt with Paul Colby and the investigators. Now, you know who I am. I'm your host, Paul Colby. And I usually bring with me a trio of investigators who are some of the best in the business to bring you the stories behind the stories behind the stories. But I have to tell you something. One of my investigators is missing tonight. I'll explain that when I get to the discussion I was going to have with her about her credentials, but there's only 2 investigators tonight instead of 3. So first of all, let me introduce to you one of the most outstanding investigators in my business. I'm talking about Otto Penn. Otto Penn is a founding member of the Commission on Funny Names for Civil Rights. That's quite an important organization in today's current events news cycle. He is also the head of the National Water Seasoning Board. And just recently, he has finished a book that is not only a bestseller, but it's probably the bestseller ever. It's called Managing Crisis Dinners. If I could just go back here for a minute to, well, let's talk about crisis dinners first of all. I personally have been to a lot of dinners, formal and informal. I don't know which ones I would consider crisis dinners. What exactly are you talking about, Otto?
Well, boss, you know, I grew up in a mixed Italian, Irish, and Jewish neighborhood, and we were all relatively open with one another, but pretty much every dinner in the entire neighborhood was always a crisis. So what happened is, after years of therapy, I started to get my arms around it, and my therapist thought a way to deal with the trauma was to write a book about it. So that's what I've done. Unfortunately, I signed my licensing rights away to the therapist, but hey, that's the way it goes.
Well, I was highly entertained by the chapter on egg rolls. I guess I'm not the only one, because anyway, I have a thing about egg rolls. But you've been a member of the Commission on Funny Names for Civil Rights for some time. Some of these funny civil rights, like the right to bear arms, I don't think too many people are confused about that, are they?
Well, there is, again, because of my Irish background. You know, when I go to the beach, I generally cover my arms, and people misinterpret that as I don't have the right to bear arms. But I do have the right to bear arms.
When you're talking about bear arms, you're not talking about the other mammal, the Kodiaks and so forth.
No, not like our
not bear arms.
Not those bear arms. I'm talking about bear, as in nudity. I'm a big proponent of going with the flow and being free.
Yeah.
So
now you
arms.
also talk about the right to assemble peaceably, but I take it that what you're talking about is when, like Mr. Do-It-Yourself tries to assemble something, say from an IKEA or something, and is trying to do too many steps at once when he should be doing one? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea, boss. That's trying to do multiple IKEA steps at one time just inevitably leads to disaster. And you have to do them one at a time.
Let me ask you another. You say that another funny civil right is the right to purchase aftermarket auto parts at rock bottom prices. Now, I don't think the framers of our Constitution really were conscious of aftermarket auto parts, were they?
Well, I mean, that is how they got to the airports in the Revolutionary War, is they drove their cars, so they had to have some concept of auto parts. So, I mean, that's my premise anyway.
I see what you're saying. Now, your work in the National Water Seasoning Board, I, for example, just noticed at the grocery store the other day some tuna-flavored seasoning for water. Are you saying that most of our water without seasoning is just not as digestible, or?
It's pretty much unpalatable, I think, to me. So, I mean, tuna is probably my, well, maybe salmon may be my favorite flavor of water, but tuna is right up there. The problem with the tuna-flavored water is, of course, the cats try and get into it, and that leads to a lot of, which keeps me from baring my arms because there's a lot of scratches on them. But
okay.
Yes, seasoning's the way to go, boss.
Okay, Jan Febb is the investigator I told you about, who is not here. And I just got this message, a text message on my phone. Jan says that she was just picked up off the street by some ICE agents. I guess that's happening a lot these days, so we don't really know where Jan is. I mean, this all came up at the last minute. Jan Febb is not here, but Bailey, a good friend of hers, has graciously volunteered to sit in her chair. Bailey, are you going to be speaking for her? I guess not. I wouldn't expect to hear too much from Bailey, so let's try to answer some of these questions. I was going to ask Jan Febb, I was going to ask her about her work where she is in the Institute for the Study of Out-of-Body Rhetorical Posturing. You know, that is one of the main things she does. And she's a professor of history of indoor aviation at the Jim and Sarasota University. And then currently she has been lecturing on smelling up arenas at the Spambassador Auditorium in Queens. You know, the first thing I was going to ask her about is that lecture tour she's doing. We've got a picture, I think, of one of the slides in a lobby at the hotel, and it looks like it's trying to get to the idea, but I think it kind of came out in a different sort of language, so it doesn't really clarify what she's talking about. Another thing I was going to ask her about is what people seem to do when they're out of body. I mean, have you ever been out of body, Otto?
Well, as a single man boss, I'm out of bodies quite frequently, but I haven't. But in that sense of out of body, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, well, I guess we'll never know. She worked on a film that is really taking America by storm, or something like a storm. It's a film about the Wrong brothers. I guess you know about the Wright brothers, but the Wrong brothers are the ones who really got indoor aviation off the drawing boards and into the classroom. But I can't ask her about it, and I don't guess Bailey is going to be much help on a subject like that. My third investigator, however, his name, according to what I have been told by his press agent, Paolo, let me get to my diagram. Paolo El Poderoso Pideroso Pepino Patino. Yes. That's his name. Now, I admit to being a little confused because the investigator who's on my payroll is El Santo Claus, the famous luchador who was actually American-born, as I understand Pepino here is.
Pepino.
You know, that's a lot of P's. I guess we'll just call you for short. Okay, well, anyway.
That's enough of that, I think.
Mr. Pepino, or whatever we want to call him, if that's his real name. I mean, some people change their socks very often. Some people change their name. I don't know. But I know he thinks in a lot of languages, but he only speaks in Spanish. So we're going to have a translator try to keep up with his comments in case I can't keep up with them, okay?
Me gusta oyendo el nombre Pepino.
Yes, okay. Now, anyway, Mr. P, you are now the curator of the Smithsonian exhibit on the importance of cleavage in Western civilization, and also the designer of the increasingly popular Eat Me software. I know some of you probably use that, right? The Eat Me software? Are you familiar with that? No, I thought we had pictures of that. Anyway, and he's also he is also the winner of an ignoble prize for ethical flexibility in transit. Now, Mr. P, one reason that you received that Nobel Prize, I think, is because of your public behavior. For example, when you recently chopped down a tree that blocked traffic at a busy intersection, a lot of influential people regarded it as some kind of performance art. Are you comfortable with that kind of language?
Claro que sí. Me gusta sentando a esta mesa con tu pingüino y este perro.
I see. And that is fascinating. Now, the Eat Me software, what I'm curious about is how you, that performance art, if you're asking me, that is performance art. But this, with the Eat Me software, it's really making a splash these days. But what I'm trying to understand is how you came to transition from performing in the ring to designing software. It seems like that's a real change of direction.
Cada día quiero nadar con los gatos y otros animales en mis verdes pantalones.
Okay. All right, well, I also know that when you wrote the book with Jack Boot about boobs in the high places, that you were cruising in some pretty high circles before you took the job at the Smithsonian. Those books about boobs in high places. I was just wondering, what is it that stirred your interest in cleavage?
El taxista tiene dos narices. Yo debo pagarle 2 veces.
Well, I also feel the same way. I mean, that's what I think too. In any case, let's get down to brass tacks here, because like he said. Anyway, I want to talk first about the big story, which has to do with the president and his big, beautiful bill. So let me give some background. If you remember, there was a time not long ago when the president repeated a rumor that was on the web about Joe Biden being replaced with a robot. And you probably just recently saw something about an AI voice imitating Marco Rubio. So you know what's going on there. Well, let me tell you what really happened here while you weren't looking. First thing, and this is something that the Week in Review said it's true, and so let me just say what they summarized. First, Trump thought he was going to lose the election, and so he split the country. We don't know where he went, but he wanted to stay out of jail, so he took off. But the leaders of these tech institution companies, they said, look, we had a pretty good thing going here with this puppet, so maybe we ought to create a synthetic version of him that we can keep propped up. And so they hired a bunch of scientists from all over the place with the intention of creating a robotic Donald Trump. Now, we have some pictures of the work that was being done here. For example, by the way, we even have a schematic. Otto, can you explain to us what that is?
I have no clue, boss. It seems to be AI generated, so it's some sort of quantum theory thing.
Okay. Well, we have some pictures also of the robotic experiment that was going on here. The scientists, they were recruited from all over the place. They spent a lot of time studying the original Donald Trump. They wanted to create a dummy, and I use that term loosely, that was a whole lot like Donald Trump so that nobody would notice the difference. And they even fueled it up with Zuckerbergers so it was ready to go. Now, my people have figured out, though, that it was not really Donald Trump, that it was a robot. Now, how did they do that? First, Otto, you told me that they have the wrong shade of orange. Is that right?
Yeah, of course, boss. Trump has put out a trademark on his shade of orange, so they're not able to do it, but I don't think they would have been able to recreate it. It's a unique shade of orange if they had tried.
The other thing, which I heard from Jan Feb, was that when they created the language package for this robot, they didn't have much room, so it has an even smaller vocabulary than the real Trump. And I personally noticed that this robot has a tattoo. You can see right there that kind of gives it away that it is not the real Trump. But I guess when they were finished with it, I understand they gave that robot a nickname. Is that right, Otto?
Yeah, well, as to be expected, it's big. It's Big Beautiful Bill.
What were you going to say, Mr.
Me gusta tocando los globos secretos en el espejo cada noche.
Bus stations are
helicopters don't land at bus stations. That's what I got.
Well, anyway, they gave him the nickname
Big Beautiful Bill. You know, that's
Beautiful Bill.
They don't have a lot of imagination, boss. So.
Okay, well, you know, the budget, let's talk about that budget a minute because it's really big. In fact, it's about 1,000 pages. And in fact, I heard some people in Congress saying, that darn thing is so big you'd think they put the Dallas phone book in there. And is that what you heard?
Well, I did, boss, but what happened is Project 2025 came along and they've actually deleted the Dallas phone book because they don't want anybody talking to one another, especially in Dallas, which is a known hotbed of liberal fortitude.
Okay, so the Dallas phone, well, I know that Marjorie Taylor Greene said she had a headache trying to read it. I know if if she tries to read more than a couple of paragraphs, it probably does hurt her head. But
And she also had, what I heard is, when she tried to read it, she had chapped lips, so she's not able to read when she has chapped lips.
okay, that explains a lot. As with any such thing, there are a bunch of winners and losers in this bill, which seems like it came straight from the Banana Republic. At least that's the way I look at it. One of the first things, I don't know if you want to call this a winner or a loser, but food stamps seem to be coming back. Does anybody know? Well, they really are going to be using them as food, aren't they?
Yeah, they're actually, since they started with the idea of they were just going to flavor the regular stamps, so when you licked them, since you were starving to death because you're not on SNAP anymore, your brain would think that you're eating something, but that didn't work so well, so now they're actually making them out of little chunks of cheddar cheese.
Okay.
Sí. Y también nos van a pagar sobre Latina Encantada.
We're going to get to Mr. Epstein a little later, but I'm glad to hear that you know about that. Anyway, at the National Institute of Health and the Center for Disease Control, we're seeing some shifts. For example, snake venom is very popular. I think that was also reported yes, it was reported in the Capitol. Well, I didn't read the story about the urine samples, but anyway, well, that's pretty exciting. Snake venom. I just had some of the new energy drinks, and they really have a bite. I guess that's because, But another thing that they're doing at the Federal Drug Administration. I mean, the Food and Drug Administration. Federal Drug Administration.
I could use some federal drugs, but
yeah. Well, here's the thing. Everybody knows we have a measles epidemic, but to pretend like we don't, I understand they're changing the name back to rubella so that people don't realize that we're talking about measles.
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, boss. But
yeah.
But what appears to be happening is Marjorie Taylor Greene took the first part of the word "rube" and thought they were insulting her, so they're going to have to go back and come up with a different name.
Okay. Winners and losers. Tax cults seem to like the new bill. As a matter of fact, a lot of the tax cults are meeting in hotels across the country right now. But losers, that would be California. Now, they were hoping, the Trump administration I'm referring to here, they were hoping California would drop in the ocean. It apparently didn't. So now they're hoping that they can, they're going to war with California and Los Angeles in particular. And that's what I hear. Of course, California was the first place to be added to the new travel ban. I guess New York might be next. Whatever. They're losers, okay? Now, another loser is PBS. For one thing, PBS News is a problem because, there's too many facts, but there's also shows like Sesame Street. Now, the president wanted to change that show to Sesame Street fighters, like little toughs out on the street, beating up other little toughs. The folks at PBS didn't want to do that, so instead he's decided to cut their funding. And he also wants to cut the funding for FEMA, which is not a very good idea right now. But some of his people who are protesting apparently don't really know how to spell FEMA. That's all I can say. I don't know if they're winners or losers. ICE is somebody who Well, the first thing I want to say about ice, and I know you have strong feelings about ice, Mr.
Buscamos una casa lejos de los pingüinos visibles.
Your ex-wives are, okay. So let me say something about, first of all, ice. Those people are all wearing masks. You know why? Because they're more self-conscious than the rest of us. They're still aware that COVID is a problem. So when they are picking up aliens, and sometimes, as you can see, they get the wrong kind of aliens when they're, well, anyway, I have heard that ICE is now setting up shop in the ice machine. I mean to say that they are in farms, for example. In farm countries, they are hiding out in the fields, hoping to find people that they can capture, aliens who are harvesting crops, I think is what we would call it. But that's not the only thing they're doing. A lot of these ICE agents are now hanging out at hotels where, of course, hotel staff are some of the people that are being picked up by ICE. They're pretending to be marimba players so that they don't look out of sorts when they're in the lobbies of these hotels. It seems to me that they don't look normal, playing a marimba in a hotel. Have you had that experience when in the wrestling game, do you see people doing?
Sí, es un problema. Estoy construyendo un edificio Doge junto a la fuente de refrescos.
That certainly seems logical, boss.
Ay, Dios mío.
Learning to type is one of the things that used to keep you safe. I mean, it doesn't anymore, I guess. Anyway, ICE, I think, is probably responsible for the new detention center in Florida. They're calling it Fumigator Alcatraz. And this place really stinks. I guess the reason it stinks, that's what I was going to ask you if we had a picture. They had some of these little stink bombs. They're orange stinkers, I think is what they call them. I'm not sure where they get these, but the odor in this Fumigator Alcatraz is so bad that people just want to escape at any cost. I
certainly don't blame him, boss. Sitting next to Senor here, I can understand the repulsive effect of possible odors.
Yeah.
Caí al cielo claro delante de una tortuga sorprendida.
Well, I don't know if there's an Olympic event specifically like that,
Well, there certainly should be.
There should be, escaping from the Fumigator Alcatraz. But you know what? That's not all. I think it's under the ambit of ICE and the Department of Homeland Security that we are building concentration camps here in America. But I am told by members of the Trump administration that it's nothing to worry about. They just want to make sure that people learn how to concentrate. So now, let me tell you what's going on. They aren't even trying to deny that they're sending people to jails, strange jails, but they're trying to say the jails are real nice. Here you see a picture, well, hold on. Here you see a picture of one of the jails that is supposed to have really good gourmet food, okay? So here's another one that's run by nuns. I mean, what could be more, more homey than a place run by nuns, okay? Isn't that great? And then there's another jail that not only has a big pool, but it has a lot of typewriters. You were telling me that journalists call it the typing pool.
Yeah, it's also known as the secretarial pool, but...
I get it now. Secretarial pool. Okay.
But then people were getting that confused with secretariat, so they went back to typewriter pool.
Well, okay, when it comes right down to it, though, you have an administration that is trying to flood the zone. As a matter of fact, Steve Bunyan was saying the other day that they already have now flooded the zone. And I'm not sure what he had in mind there. I know some of what happened, though, is that they decided to send the National Guard into Los Angeles. And that took some new forms of transportation. I mean, it's a pretty large gourd. When they got to L.A., though, there wasn't very much for the men in uniform to do, so they're mostly standing around there in L.A. I know some of them are trying to mingle with the crowd. And Trump had originally said they were going there because of the violence in L.A., but I think that he might have actually been referring to the violins in L.A.
Sí, pero estoy pensando de tirando las hamburguesas sobre mis calcetines. ¿No?
From the window of my patio, I can see parts of Los Angeles and parts of Alaska.
I see mostly dumpsters, but you know.
Dumpsters.
I'm not in your income bracket, boss. So.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, where we live, it's kind of hotty-totty. The president, though, in order to make himself popular among the religious right, he's backing all of these proposals to put the 10 Commandments back in the schools. You were telling me they had to make some adjustments, though, to the 10 Commandments?
It actually was quite complicated. At first, they wanted to go, because they have to remove commandments because, you know, the president doesn't follow them.
Oh, that's right. He's accused of...
So originally, they wanted to go reduce it to 6, and then it could be 10, 1, 0, and base 6. And it would also be 3 factorial. So that had some appeal, but then Doge got involved, and they were told to reduce all staffing and all things by 75%. So that leaves 2.5 commandments are left.
Okay, well, so they won't take...
The half a commandment being thou shalt not, and then it just doesn't have anything.
Well, it'll certainly take up less space that way.
And that's an important cost savings, boss.
In the public schools. One thing I wanted to remember, I have it here on my device, is that the president has been saying that he doesn't want to be king, but we have this picture, don't we? We have a picture of one of the back rooms there at the White House where he's been trying on a bunch of costumes. We know that if he doesn't want to be a king, he certainly already has some jesters, and as well as dead people that he's appointing to the cabinet. And I think the strategy there is that when he appoints a dead person to a cabinet position, they can't really go to Congress to be approved or disapproved because they're dead. And as a matter of fact, there's another news report in the Capitol Comedy. They have just had a report about the dead people in the cabinet.
Well, but they haven't actually, I mean, they should, because Republicans in the Senate will approve anyone, including dead people. So I'm a little bit unclear why they're nominating any dead people.
I think some of the dead people have more to contribute than some of the people that are, well, you know.
They, among other things, they have femurs they could contribute.
They have body parts.
Yeah.
You know a lot about body parts. I know you've tried to remove them from some of your colleagues.
Sí, puedo prometerte que voy a beber jugo de naranja en mis zapatos.
I think I'm also related distantly to the Pope, but he's not the one I had in mind when I was.
I'm actually a descendant of, remember when the Pope, they had the captivity in Avignon, and they had two popes. I'm actually a descendant of the junior Pope.
Yeah, okay, oh, all right.
He had a lot of kids, by the way.
While I'm still talking about the president, and I am, in order to revive his image before he got to the, well, we'll get to what he finally got to, but he thought a military parade might really do the trick. I don't think from the pictures I've seen that it really went down the way that he had hoped it would. It certainly was an interesting parade, but I don't think that it did the job. So then he decided he would go down to the new Kennedy Center. First, he hosted some nuns playing saxophones. This is kind of to signal that a new kind of entertainment was in the offing. And then he had some human beings assume the pretzel shapes that a lot of people in Congress are having to.
The Orange Man Group.
Wait, what is my?
Orange Man Group.
Ay, Dios.
Do you hear that voice talking about the man group?
¿Qué es este?
It must be a sign from above. I mean, there's a light above, but maybe there's also a sign. Anyway, even at the Kennedy Center, and you know what? These pretzel shapes, he took some of these pretzels into his own, can I call it a coin of the realm? Anyway, he wanted to make the pretzel a symbol of where the country was going, anyway,
there may also be, he may be introducing a new form of cryptocurrency called sourdough. So that's what my sources tell me, but you know, sometimes my sources are a bit shaky, so we'll have to see what happens.
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it ended up. Nothing was working, so he finally decided a war is a good distraction. And as was reported in the Capital Comedy Weekly, Trump was pointing out that attention to his war powers was probably going to discourage focus on less redeeming virtues of being a sentient being, although he's claiming to be a sentient being. But anyway.
He's got quite the sense of humor, doesn't he, boss? You got to admit it.
He really does. But then the next thing that happened was, after they bombed Iran, you had Vice President Vance say, "We are not at war with Iran. You must have it confused with California." Or was that, yeah. And then Repeat Hegseth got into the act. He said about the people in Iran and the buildings in Iran, he said, "I got bombed lots of times, so I know what it's like." Now, that wasn't exactly what the president wanted Repeat Hegseth to say.
He's
he
also
re-
he's a good Secretary of Defense because he's also very familiar with shots.
yeah,
I think that may be his main qualification.
well, one thing that he was talking about was the possible use of bunker butlers. Do you know? I don't know what a bunker butler is supposed to do except go down into the Supreme Breeder headquarters and say,
Well, it's a bit like a silent waiter. Is that the proper term?
like a dumb waiter,
Like
yes.
a dumb waiter, yes.
Sí, 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 pero no quiero nadar fuera de un tren de payasos. Cada día, cada semana, cada año.
Well,
I'm
not sure
I
people-
recognize New Jersey every time I fly over it, but anyway.
which exit?
Huh?
Which exit, New Jersey, are you from?
56.
Okay.
But,
9.
but let's get back to Iran for a minute because the president said that the nuclear program in Iran was obliterated. So what was he talking about? Well, he put out some pictures, or the Department of Offense did, showing some destruction, but it wasn't very clear if this was at the Supreme Breeder reactor where the nuclear program from Iran actually originates. I used to watch this program. It's called Protons, Electrons, and, well, they keep changing the name of the program, but, you know, their nuclear program has been off the air a couple of times just for, you know, for power outages and things like that, you know.
Well, it's a very quarky program, I think, boss.
Yeah,
Would be
it
the
is.
way I would put it.
Anyway, let's talk about divorces, because really when you talk about the problems Trump is having, they have to do with a divorce he had with Elon Musk, but that's not the only divorce going on in MAGA country right now. For example, I think you may have noticed recently that Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz got it on, sort of like, you are a bottom feeder, I know who I am, but what are you? That sort of discussion. And I even found myself agreeing, believe it or not, I confess, I agreed with Tucker Carlson on some points.
No. Cocinamos con cuchara de vil entre las nubes del algodón.
I don't know that Tucker Carlson plays a grand piano. I know Ted Cruz plays a banjo, but only, you know, for entertainment.
Sí, pero Curry hacía el espejo frío encima de una tortilla solar. ¿No?
No. See?
He said it. I didn't say it. Okay.
Deliciosos.
Did they use one of my favorites from the playground? I'm rubber and you're glue. Everything you say bounces off me and sticks to you. Was that Cruz or Carlson?
I don't know who that was. It sounds like Marjorie Taylor Greene. But look, while Elon Musk was a part of MAGA world and Doge was going everywhere, mostly they weren't really shaking things up as much as they were changing some of the names. For example, the Department of Homeland Security is now actually known as the Department of Homeland Sororities, or is it severity? I
recall that movie, but maybe I shouldn't admit to watching that. But.
Oh, yeah, nobody.
Yo también no sé por qué ustedes no quieren entrar mis albercas inflables.
I once went to a movie that Marjorie Taylor Greene was in, but I didn't go with her.
I did go to one when she was in the theater, and she with Lauren Boebert, in fact, and they eventually got kicked out because they spent the whole movie shouting at the screen.
Yeah, and popcorn that was before we had popcorn, but we're getting to that now. The FBI is another institution that underwent a name change, and Kash Patel, I think he originally asked, next slide please, he originally asked Marjorie Taylor Greene to work on the sign, and she couldn't spell FBI, but they eventually got it right, the Federal Bureau of Intimidation. And I think people are now getting used to the intimidation from our government. I know that you can actually have tanks in your kitchen now to remind you that we're all really, we're under surveillance, but we're also under military kind of martial law, okay? Martial law is something you guys in the wrestling business don't have to do because...
Sí. Tienes la ventana apagada sobre la tina encantada.
I don't eat eggs anymore, but it hasn't affected the way that I do business. You know, that's what I'm saying. Another thing that got changed, the CIA now has a new name, a new building actually too, but it's now called the YMCA.
YMCA.
You were telling me that the music in the elevators there is really awful.
Yeah, it's mostly, what is it? There's a lot of ABBA. So that's, you know, unless you're
I love ABBA myself, but
well, I'm just not.
I like the cover style.
Anything associated with the International Order of Palindromes, I just refuse to deal with. So.
Okay, there's also the Department of Gardens and Pardons. This is an interesting department because in order to get a pardon, the reason that you go to the garden for a pardon is that you first have to seed some doubts about whether somebody was guilty of something so that they can be pardoned. So that, I understand that's why they call it the Department of Gardens and Pardons. But another thing that's happening, I don't know if we want to blame Elton, but I think it's his fault, is, and I don't mean, you know, sending the Proud Boys to work for ICE. I'm talking about something else, and that is changing the names of military bases. Now, we changed some of these things that were named after Confederates, but now they're being renamed except with the names of Confederates, but for example, Fort Hood. Yes. What is that supposedly based on?
Well, Fort Hood, it's based on a car part because you have to look, you know, you have to look,
part where you
raise.
I mean, of course,
I don't do that. I delegate that to lesser beings. But yes, it's the part that lifts up, kind of like an elephant trunk.
Okay, yeah. Fort Pickett.
That's. Oh, geez, what is
based on the fence, right?
It's based on the fence. It's true. I mean, they started. It was going to be Fort Lincoln, which was kind of a Lincoln log fence, but then they went Fort Pickett because a picket fence is more representative.
And Fort Bragg, I don't know who they could be talking about there.
I think we may have an example right here.
Pero vendimos las salchichas.
Okay.
Vendimos las salchichas.
You know, I have a new product to fill up stadiums. You spray it out of a can. You can fill up, well, anyway, you can fill up a stadium. Now, one of the things that happened under Elon Musk while he was part of the government, before there was the big falling out, they actually indicted a ham sandwich. What I understand is the ham sandwich actually committed suicide off camera, but okay, and right. And one thing that irritated the president apparently was when Elon brought a car to the White House, and the president thought it was just some kind of computer, which of course he can't operate. And then the place kind of turned into a used car lot, if you want to know the truth. But here's what happened. Somebody told the president, before they came to blows, they said, "Didn't you know that Elon Musk is from South Africa?" And he thought, Trump thought originally that he was from South Carolina. He had it all mixed up. But then, to try to gloss over this problem, he gave Musk the keys to a Tesla. And that apparently angered him very much. So what finally happened was that they came to blows, and as we know very well, Musk said that Trump is mentioned in the Epstein files. Now, I'll tell you why that story came to happen. There was a plane called the Lolita Express. You may have known about this. And Trump asked Musk if he could buy it. Trump said, well, somebody already bought it on Craigslist. And so that's when Qatar came in and said, actually, we have a jet you can have. It even has a swimming pool, and it has some big screens. And that didn't really mollify the president because he was worried about these Epstein files. So lately, you have had Pam Bondi saying, it turns out there are no Epstein files. And the reason that she says that, hold on with that slide for a minute. The reason she says that is because apparently there was disappearing ink, and when they were exposed to her desk, all of the data on that 1,000 pages, almost as long as the big, beautiful bill, it just disappeared. But you heard something different, that
boss,
they changed the name.
They've changed the name now. As little known fact that Epstein's nickname was Ep.
Right.
And he, of course, he and Trump liked women on the younger side. So his files became known as Epstein files. And so now that the name has changed, there are no Epstein files.
And that's why
Bondi can say that with a straight face.
That's right. Well, I got to say...
no podemos conducir con cucharas débiles.
You see that in some of the flea bag hotels also, I think. I mean, not just the luxury
I did see that on the internet a few years ago, but let's not go there.
Anyway, all right, so then let me go through this pretty quickly. There were some pictures of Trump in the Epstein files, apparently. We know they probably involved women and iguanas, and then the picture of a really fat man on the beach or island, if you want to call it that. That's what he doesn't want released. Now, yes, right. So after Musk left, the first thing he did was he threatened not to bring the astronauts down, but they said that if he didn't bring them down, that they were going to hitch a ride, I guess with Lyft or something, or I don't know, one of these new services. And then feeling bad about all of the air traffic controllers that he got fired, Musk decided he had a bunch of $50 gift cards from Radio Shack that he used to give away for Christmas bonuses. He sent that to each of the leaders of the international airports saying, here's $50 to update your software. Okay? But anyway, he left. He's now working on a new political party. I think they're going to call it the Landing Party, because he has no problem taking off, but he seems to have a problem landing. And even all of this stuff that's going on, it's even coloring our sporting events. You know, first of all, we have the Well, you know, the acting director of FEMA said he didn't even know there was a hurricane season. He just thought it was baseball season. But Trump has been trying to get a mayor league of baseball so that mayors who are getting in his way are busy playing baseball. One thing they're doing at these new stadiums where they have Major League Baseball is they're selling a lot of Stephen Miller Light beer. You've tried some of that, haven't you, Otto?
Yeah, yes, boss. It's a bit like a German lager.
But with a bitter taste.
With a bitter taste.
With a bitter taste.
Yeah.
And another thing, since the Pope likes Major League Baseball, he's been selling popcorn and some hot dogs that I think he guarantees they're not from Haiti or something like that.
Or Springfield, Ohio.
Or, yeah. Now, another event, in addition to the Olympic event for Olympic Ozympics, this is going to be based on things like Survivor and the Hate Show, where people trying to express their protest and, you know, carrying out their civil liberties are being hunted down by military personnel in tanks, and they have to get away. That could make for some interesting sport, I guess you could say.
And we have a cabinet secretary that's quite skilled at being in reality TV, and the president, in fact, is skilled at reality TV. So
let me close with one thing. We are always hearing from our new chief executive how he is so smart and how well he does on tests. And I think we got a copy of this. I got it from Jan Feb, who's now been nabbed by ICE, apparently. In answer to the question, why does the chicken cross the road, we have a long political dialogue from His Excellency about, you know, left-wing promises. And so we also have the doctor's evaluation, because while the president says he's in a class by himself, the doctor says he should be in a class by himself for the protection of all of you people, you know, just for your safety, and preferably he would be in a padded cell so that he couldn't hurt any more people. So anyway, that's all we have time for to wrap up. I'm certainly glad you could join us, Otto, and Bailey, I'm glad you could sit in for Jan Feb. And as for you, Mr.
Pepino.
Yeah.
Pepino.
I mean, a lot of what you had to say was useful, but not to anyone that's in my audience.
Hey, that hurts.
You know. So that's it. That's all for today. And you know what? I mean, if you ever come on my show again like this.
No escondes cerca la ventana.
If you ever come on my show and do this kind of thing again, I'm going to make sure that you never work in this town
That certainly was an interesting experience. Glad I stayed on your good side, boss.